I'm Ben Cooper, and this is how you sell without selling out. Rogers that.
I'm Rogers Healy, and welcome to Rogers That, a podcast dedicated to selling without selling out. Today, we have someone who has been a part of a lot of sales, whether it's the .com era, whether it's the precipice of AI, but it all revolves around marketing and the psychology of sales. Ben Cooper and I met in the great city of Dallas, and I'm going to give you a little bit of background real quick so y'all can have an appreciation for the wisdom you're about to have dumped on you this morning. He's got a BS in accounting from Louisiana State at Lafayette. He's a raging Cajun. And Louisiana people, by the way, very underrated state pride. I would rank the state prides as Texas number 1, Ohio number 2, Louisiana number 3. So much so to where somebody from my team and Ben were talking this morning, and then next thing you know, they're talking in French and eating gumbo. And I'm drinking coffee. Ben is actually drinking jambalaya here at 8 o'clock in the morning. He started his journey as the head of acquisition, marketing, and business development at Blockbuster, which is a fun fact because my very first job was at Blockbuster Video on the corner of University and Hillcrest. But I worked in Gamescape, the video game niche, where I got fired because I gave away free video games. And there's another story behind that. But look at you now, Blockbuster. He spent a decade of his career at Camelot, which is a marketing company he helped create. He was in charge of strategic marketing and media as executive vice president. And I have a mutual friend, Alex Richter, which is how I first heard about Camelot. And I just think it's so cool where my background is in marketing and advertising. And I had to find ways to integrate that into the pretty stale world of real estate 20 something years ago, and learned that marketing lives and breathes in every business, no matter what the business is, whether it's a product, a service, or even AI, which I'm excited to talk to Ben about today. He's an entrepreneur at heart. He understands the world of creative. He understands the world of business. And most recently, Ben made the strategic decision to exit the company that he was a founder of and sold it to PMG for all the right reasons, one of which is that Ben wants to be a part of the rocket ship where it's being built mid-space, and PMG gave them the opportunity to grow to scale, and for him to be a part of something where 1,000 people now have a bigger home to go and grow. And so with all that being said, this is my pleasure, or it is my pleasure, to introduce to you my friend, Ben Cooper. So thanks for coming.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Did I miss anything in the intro?
No, but it's funny. You talked about your first job was at Blockbuster. Yeah. So my first job in high school was at a Blockbuster Video.
Really?
In Lafayette, Louisiana.
Really?
But more interesting is my parents opened one of the first video rental stores in the country in 1980.
What?
In Lafayette, Louisiana.
What was it called?
It was called Video Store Galore.
Oh, I like that.
My parents, kind of serial entrepreneurs. My dad, degree in petroleum engineering, but did lots of different things. Read a magazine article about videos and VCRs, and ended up a friend in Lafayette who was a pharmacist asked if he could lease part of the pharmacy to rent out VHS cassettes when VHS cassettes were like $100,
Wow.
Like when they first came out in 1980. So it was super expensive to buy. Nobody was renting them. It took off so much. The pharmacist decided to partner with this. The pharmacy turned into a video store, and that video store ended up becoming 4 or 5.
You're talking about Video Store Galore?
Yeah. And then they franchised it.
No way.
And then they ended up selling out. And that's part of how my youth, I'm from Louisiana, but kind of grew up all over because it was basically my dad following the growth of the video industry. So we moved to Portland, Oregon, and he worked for National Video. Then we moved to Washington, D.C., and he worked for Arrows Video. And then they got acquired by Blockbuster.
No way.
And at that point, he realized Blockbuster was going to win the game, and it was time to get out of the game. So he moved home to Louisiana, and they kind of started over.
Well, not to dwell on this, but this is all authentic. This is us getting to know each other better. But wasn't Blockbuster based in Dallas?
So Blockbuster started
was it
in
Wayne
Dallas.
Huizenga was Blockbuster?
Yeah. So Wayne didn't start Blockbuster. The very first Blockbuster ever actually was at Skillman and Northwest Highway.
No way.
So in that Medallion Shopping Center, which I think today it's either the Mattress Firm or the Applebee's for those of you in Dallas, that was the original Blockbuster
Shout out
Video.
to Applebee's.
Yeah. But they started in Dallas. When Wayne bought Blockbuster, he moved it to South Florida. So Blockbuster was in Fort Lauderdale for a while, and then they moved back to Dallas.
What else? Wayne has he owned the Miami Dolphins. He
made his money in waste management, and then he bought Blockbuster. He owned the Dolphins. I think he owned the Marlins.
He owned randomly. This is a completely off subject story. Where the short of it, the first time we traveled with our now 2-year-old, we went to Vail And I'm a very clumsy guy, and I get really nervous with a baby, especially if the baby happens to be mine. And we were at breakfast at this random little, the Sun and Out in Vail. I'll never forget it. And I tripped, and I unfortunately tripped over an older gentleman, and he fell, and he fell. And I was like, I'm so sorry. How can I make this up to you? He's like, no problem. You're a gentleman. You're probably not from here. I was like, I'm from Texas. Where are you from? He's like, I'm from all over, but I work here. I was like, what do you do? He's like, I own Vail. I was like, I own Dallas. He's like, no, I literally own Vail. And I was like, you have to be kidding me. So I end up becoming, I'm not going to say his name, but he was Wayne Huizenga's business partner.
Wow. And he owns Vail Resorts.
Well, he's just sold him to Disney, which, anyway, he's like, if you ever want to come here, I was like, yeah. And then freaking A, now Disney owns it. But it all comes back to Blockbuster is the point. And I still have my polos, which I was so proud to work there. And I got terminated. But one of the biggest benefits is as a peak fat kid in high school, Blockbuster lets you have free snacks. And I vividly remember they had snow caps, which were those chocolate chips with little white sprinkles. And it brings me back. So I digress. But back to the story. You're an idea guy, but in the world of creative, it's always been interesting to me. You're very smart. You're intelligent, and you probably look at the world analytically. And you were a part of a family of entrepreneurs. How did you weave that into the world of marketing, especially back when you got into it in the true .com era? You were saying that you worked for a company in Dallas that raised a bunch of money, when money was just different in the late 90s, and the .com era comes out and people are, spending money, they're going to become billionaires. And next thing you know, it all comes, to a screeching halt. But what was that experience like for you?
Yeah. So I moved to Dallas to get my MBA. So shout out to UTD. They were starting their full-time MBA program and basically gave me a free ride. So I was able to come and go to school for free. And this was in 98, 99. So it was right at the start of kind of all things internet. And so I decided when I was looking for a job, like most of my classmates were going to work for management consulting firms. And that's, who was offering the most money. And I thought, this internet thing seems real. Like it'd probably be a good idea for me to get smart about the internet. So I took a much lower paying job with a internet startup here in Dallas.
So what did that even, what was that even like saying, would the parallel be to AI right now, where it was such a foreign?
It was. So I can tell you, like going home to Louisiana and visiting family, when I told them what I was doing, they thought I was like a IT maintenance guy. Yeah. Because that's all people knew is like, so you work with computers, there wasn't really an internet like we think of it today being, pervasive in everything. So people didn't really understand what it was that you did. And what was good for me was digital marketing, kind of the early internet age, was kind of the perfect combination of creativity and analytics. Like you had to be good with numbers because it was all finally trackable. So you had more data than you ever did before as a business or a marketer. And so you could really kind of analyze marketing campaigns in a way that you couldn't in the past. So the people who really kind of succeeded early were those who were comfortable thinking strategically, thinking creatively, but they could actually bust open a spreadsheet, run some pivot tables, and kind of figure out what's working or not.
But you wouldn't think of that as the internet. Like obviously you would, but I'm saying like in my pea brain, that's not, I would think of like the initial, Yahoo or just these companies that eliminated the phone book or eliminated, different ways to advertise. So you looked at it really more strategically, analytically, and brought a more creative business approach to the internet. Was that kind of the spin?
Yeah. So, the way to think about it is, I call it, Internet 1.0 was just taking everything in its current state and putting it on a web page. So you're right. A lot of it was just companies putting up a website.
You remember the first web page you ever went to?
Gosh, I do. So when we lived in Washington, D.C. for a while growing up in a suburb in Fairfax, Virginia, and my dad got Prodigy. Oh, yeah. It was a very early ISP. And there was only a couple things you could do on Prodigy at the time. One was sports. I've always been a huge sports fan. So like being able to get sports scores and stuff was interesting. But all the auto manufacturers were the first ones to put up web pages. And pretty much all you could do was order brochures for cars. And I've always been a car nut. So literally as a kid, I went and ordered every car brochure that's available online. So I literally had like a shelf in my bedroom that was like any car that year you could imagine. I had the brochure for it because that was kind of all you could do on the web at the time.
Golly, I remember the first time I got on the internet was in San Antonio. I was like 14, and I've always collected memorabilia. And I was in a chat room on, it might have been Prodigy or AOL. And no, it was some whatever. And there was a chat room for buying and selling baseball cards. And I was in the innocence of it. And I was like, this is insane. And it would take somebody like 4 minutes to respond, not because they were gaming you, but it's because you had that, the dial up and, look how far it's come. But from the business perspective side of things. So you're thankfully not the guy writing the check back in the day, right? And you're seeing this kind of money as a 23-year-old, a 24-year-old. And what was that like living in that, the era of what maybe is AI right now?
Yeah, I mean, it was nuts. So our startup was doing great, kind of early on. And this was in the phase of everybody crushing it. So we had guys coming to work with us. So like the company we use for our email management was a company called Kana. And I'll never forget the guy who came to help with our Kana implementation. They had just gone public and their stock shot up and he was a millionaire, at 22, first job out of school. And he looked at our company. He was like, oh my gosh, Ben, you guys are going to crush it. Like what you're doing is way more impressive than what we're doing even. So you guys are going to make, crazy money. And then the bubble burst, so you saw lots of companies that took off kind of irrationally. And then after that, the dust settled and it was kind of the, web, 1.5 of what are the real businesses. And it was time to kind of bootstrap.
So why did, I've never asked this question to anybody, when the .com bubble burst, why, what happened? What was the actual, origin of it all just kind of imploding? Was it too much at the same time?
It was, irrational money finally settling down. And, so many companies got crazy valuations and the numbers just weren't coming. And then it finally got to a point where people realized the numbers they would eventually have to hit to justify those valuations were probably never going to happen. And I had an interesting view of it because at the startup I was at, iChoose.
That was the name of the company?
That was the name of the company. Shout out to Alex Richter, my business partner at Camelot, because we were also at iChoose together.
No way.
That's where Alex and I met. So the company we worked for was basically a piece of software you could download. And again, this is early internet. So anything you had to download was hard because the bandwidths were small.
Take forever.
But we could see what you were shopping for online. And then we could alert you if there was a better price somewhere else. So the example I'd always give is if you were at Amazon looking at the new Harry Potter book and we knew from our system it was cheaper at Barnes & Noble, our little alert would pop up, say, hey, you're about to buy Harry Potter, $19.99 Amazon, $3 shipping. It's $15.99 plus $2 shipping at Barnes & Noble. Click here. We would instantly take you to Barnes & Noble and kind of pre-populate your cart.
So what was that kind of system called? Was it a licensing deal or was it
so basically
integration?
Yeah. So the way we made money was we were an acquisition vehicle for all the e-commerce companies. So to use that same example, we go to Barnes & Noble and say, hey, we scrape all of Amazon, all these other websites. We know what the prices are. We know what things
Amazon was selling books.
At the time, Amazon was only selling books, CDs, DVDs, and some electronics.
Holy crap.
It was early Amazon. And so we go to these companies and say, we can be your customer acquisition vehicle. So Rogers, if you're the marketing lead for Barnes & Noble, I tell you, tell me what discount you want to give to make your price always cheaper than Amazon. And we will pop up, apply that appropriate coupon, bring somebody, kind of expose them to Barnes & Noble as their solution. Hopefully then you keep them, long term. So part of my job was going and selling the product to some of these e-commerce companies. So early in that cycle, I would go to PetSmart's internet office, more.com, which was kind of the original online pharmacy. Barnes & Noble, kind of all these big e-commerce giants, and they had these bustling offices. And, it was like kind of the early super cool .com offices with like all the fancy stuff that no offices had ever had before.
That you can't touch or see. You're saying that you're selling an idea.
No, not an idea. I'm saying like literally these companies had incredible workspaces.
Wow.
So this is kind of the precursor to like the amazing Google offices of, the offices with the ping pong tables and, everything else. So I'd see these offices teeming with people, companies crushing it. And only 6 months later, I'm visiting those same companies and they are ghost towns. And it's literally like 200 empty Aeron chairs that they're trying to sell because they've laid off 90% of their staff and all the VC funding dried up. And that's really what kind of took everything down.
Two questions. One, when you're the first to sell something, how do you price it? Like how do you go and you're again, it's Narnia. It's this thing that I cannot imagine what it was like, especially it's probably really fun as a younger guy because, it's the wild, wild west and you got nothing to lose. But how do y'all do foundational pricing when that has literally nothing like that has ever been done before?
It was hard. And the harder part was you would get two reactions. So we would come in and explain what we did to somebody. And when people finally got it, because this was a hard concept at the time, because this was very new internet, and just the thought of like, wait a minute, you can see what my customers are doing on my website was super foreign for people. And so
was
when
it real time?
It was real time.
God,
and
so this is 30 years ago.
Yeah, this was 1999, 2000.
Wow.
And so when it
25 years ago.
Yeah, so when they finally realized what it did, you would get one of two reactions. They'd either be super excited and be like, sign me up, let's go. Or literally, there's a few of them who are like, get the F out of my office. Like, and if I find out you're taking customers off my website, I will sue the pants off
Like you're
of
a
you.
pirate.
Yes.
So is it legal to do that?
It was totally legal because it was literally, we were just a piece of software. We were actually sitting on the computer, on the desktop, so we weren't really doing anything to the website. And it's interesting because that model later has, taken off. And like, I'd say the closest thing today is you're familiar with Honey. It's very similar to Honey, which Honey is today it's a browser add-on you can do where same thing, it alerts you if there's coupons or discounts in other places. It was really kind of a shopping assistant. You did.
Golly. So but again, back to, so the whole thing, again, there's too much money, and maybe that's where we can kind of pivot. And I want to be sure to tell the story of Camelot, but I'm a learner, and AI, I started, everyone's heard about it, but a few years ago, I was like, all right, this is kind of interesting, but I feel like all of a sudden, boom, it's everywhere. And I do feel like this is a little bit different than when the internet came out, because you're forced to kind of adapt to it. So maybe we're skipping steps. We're going to get back to it. But with what you're doing with PMG now, is part of what you're doing integrating AI and being on the front line of actually making AI marketing's friend versus all the stories we read about people potentially being in trouble?
Yeah, I mean, we're using AI lots of ways. I mean, so one, in the technology we use to kind of manage marketing campaigns for customers, AI is built, into that tool. So it's using every resource available to optimize campaigns, kind of find insights, figure out places we should make changes to kind of get better performance.
So do you have to build that from the start? You have to. So it's funny. We had Chase Murray come up. I was telling you, he was talking to us about. I didn't realize that I've been using GPT just from my phone, just one off. But I didn't realize you could create kind of your own infrastructure, and then you don't own it. Someone else can go in, right? So that's kind of what you're doing?
Yeah. So, there's different types. I mean, so there's AI outside of kind of the MLLs, like ChatGPT that lots of companies use. So that all the companies we partner with, the Metas, the Googles, they've been using AI for years. And so it's kind of baked in the tools and there's smart ways to use it there. But kind of the explosion of ChatGPT, yes, like we have an enterprise version of ChatGPT at PMG that we can do things inside of it that stays within the walls of PMG so that data is not going out and teaching the model for other people to leverage it. It kind of stays within us.
So you're the one that's a beautiful mind sitting there trying to frame this whole thing out?
Yeah. And a lot of it is crowdsourcing ideas. So we've given every employee an enterprise license to ChatGPT. OpenAI is a partner, and we're telling people, try it to improve your job in any way possible and then share it. So we have Slack channels around kind of sharing prompts, kind of ChatGPT hacks, and people will figure out ways to do processes today that are hard that the AI can help, and then kind of sharing with the rest of the team.
And they don't feel threatened.
Because it's very much a enhance you versus replace you kind of mentality. And the thing that's really interesting with ChatGPT, and especially the new, 4.0, is it gets better as you tell it who you want it to be. So like if you keep telling it, so to use this example, if I say, hey, you're a podcaster, you're a real estate tycoon, you have lots of investments in different companies, ask me interview questions.
So I have to tell them that. I have to literally type that.
Yeah. So literally, if you prompt ChatGPT and tell it the personality you want it to have or the role it should be playing, then when you start asking it questions, it will use that to inform how it responds to you.
It's insane. Loaded question. Do you think we will, or will we ever get to a point where AI can be creative? and like creative in the sense that like, you know, you're an idea guy at the end of the day, right? And I think a lot of the text messages we've had, you know, the Nike stuff, like you've worked on some really fun stuff that in my mind requires like a human brain. Do you think it'll get to the point to where there's going to be an intersection where AI versus human is going to compete?
I think it's really more, it helps spark creativity. So,
based off of stuff that's happened in the past.
Yeah. So, and one way to think about it is a great source of inspiration. So if you're a writer and you get stuck in an area and you prompt ChatGPT to give you some ideas, it can throw out 4 or 5 ways you could take your story, and that may prompt you to decide on the next path. Or the creatives at PMG, our creative team, we were working on a campaign the other day for one of our QSR clients. And instead of spending a lot of time creating a whole bunch of, you know, mocks of what maybe some outdoor billboards would look like, they do it all in ChatGPT. And they can...
Meaning what?
They'll literally go on and prompt and put... create an image of a outdoor billboard setting as Los Angeles freeway with a burger exploding through the billboard, 3D, realistic looking. And then that image is pretty close to what you would do for production. So you can look and see how it feels, show that to a customer to see what they think about it before you spend a lot of energy actually building it yourself.
On the AI?
Oh, yeah.
So your people that, and again, if there's anything I ask that, just tell me. Are there people at PMG that are on the design side, like they're doing, and so they're working with it too?
Yes.
And they feel like it's helping them, and it's not a threat to.
Oh, it's huge. It's an enhancer for sure, because again, you can throw lots of things at it to see what it looks like before you actually put a lot of your own energy into it.
Holy crap.
So it's like the ultimate brainstorming tool in a lot of ways.
Holy crap! Back to Camelot, where I want to make sure we're showing, because this is a genuine act. Like it's bad for Chase to sit down with me because I sit there and I get it, but I don't, and I'm trying to figure out ways to integrate it into my life, which I think I'm doing. But creatures of habit are really hard, I think, to just stop, because if it's working for you, to stop and take time out to build something that's going to work better, that's really overwhelming, I think, for salespeople, which I think at the root of it, that's kind of what I am. So with the journey of Camelot, right? Like you take the .com experience, you take the entrepreneurial experience, and you find people you partner with like Alex that have different skill sets, right? You build this company for 20 years, right? If not longer, was it?
Yeah. So Camelot actually had been around for 40 years.
40.
So the original founders were a husband and wife team, and their big initial client was Southwest Airlines. So Camelot did all media and marketing strategy for Southwest Airlines for over 30 years.
Got it.
So they kind of grew as Southwest grew, because when they started the agency, Southwest was just a regional carrier. And then as Southwest became more national, became the number one airline, they kind of grew with it. Where the Camelot story came in for me was when I was at Blockbuster. So I got recruited to go to Blockbuster to launch their Netflix competitor. So this was 2003. Netflix only had 1 million subscribers at the time. And Blockbuster realized, hey, this DVD by mail thing is probably something we should launch a competitor product. And so I got recruited to come in and kind of launch that business and build that business for Blockbuster.
No way.
Yeah. So lucky for me, Camelot was the media agency for Blockbuster at the time. So that's how I met the original founders.
When you say media agency, that means that like everything with creative and strategy.
So no creative. So the media was strictly the buying the ad space. So Camelot did no creative. All we did was marketing strategy. So kind of figuring out what should we do from a marketing perspective, and then where do we actually spend the money? So TV, digital, out of home, radio, which stations, which partners,
Wow.
which time slots. Where do these customers live? Which DMA should we focus on the most?
Got it.
Camelot was really focused on the strategy and the media.
Got it.
And so they were our media partner at Blockbuster. So that's how I originally got exposed to Camelot, met the original founders. At the time, Camelot really didn't have a digital practice because this was still pretty early in digital marketing.
So what does digital mean?
So, paid search. There was no Facebook then yet even. So it was mostly banner ads, paid search. AOL and Yahoo were kind of the 800-pound gorillas at the time from an advertising perspective. So Alex Richter and our other partner, Sam Bloom, actually went to Camelot to start the digital practice at Camelot.
While you were still with Blockbuster.
While I was still with Blockbuster. So I became kind of their first big digital client. And then they kept growing the digital practice at Camelot. When I saw the writing on the wall at Blockbuster after a few years, I left to do one more startup, moved to Fort Worth to do a fintech startup that was a Sequoia and TCV-backed startup. But Tom Callahar, the founder of Camelot, told me, whenever you're ready to come to Camelot, I'm going to keep an office open for you.
Huh.
And to his credit, Tom literally kept an open office next to his for 6 years.
Wow.
And would call me about every 6 months. You ready to come to Camelot? You ready to come to Camelot? And finally, after I kind of did what I wanted to do with the startup, Tom called one day and I was like, yeah, let's talk. Like, I think the timing's right. And so that's when Sam, Alex, and I kind of got the band back together. And we kind of took over the reins of Camelot.
Wow. And again, so this was what, 2008?
So this was 2011.
So 2011, which is still, I mean, like, obviously the internet's there, social media is there, not to the degree it is now. But how did you take 2 decades of experience of, I mean, disruption? Like, whether you intended to or not, you were on the first front of disrupting the internet and how people interact and how people read data. How did you bring that to Camelot in 2011, knowing that the plan was to, be ahead of the game and maintain, massive clients, but to take a business/analytical approach to marketing? What was that like?
Yeah, so a lot of my role at Camelot when I came was kind of merging traditional media with digital media. So at a lot of companies, agencies, brands, the traditional side, so think of TV, radio, out-of-home, print, didn't understand digital and didn't interact with the digital teams. You had digital marketing teams who understood paid search, Facebook, banner ads, but they didn't know what a GRP was in TV. They couldn't tell you what
is a GRP?
It's a rating point. So it's kind of a measure of how many people are seeing a TV commercial.
Is that through Nielsen?
Effectively,
okay,
yes.
I got you. Okay.
And so the two sides didn't speak the same language. They were both kind of afraid of what each other did, so that they often were distant. And so it was really hard to get truly integrated marketing and media plans because these two sides were kind of operating independently. Luckily for me, I did both through my career. So at JCPenney, at Blockbuster, at my fintech startup, I was always doing kind of full funnel marketing. So I was controlling the TV and the radio and the digital pieces. So part of what I helped when I first came to Camelot was helping kind of be the connective tissue between those sides to make sure that we're being really smart about how do we leverage the best of all the various media channels to get the best results for our client.
You were probably at the time literally the only person that had experience in every vertical.
It was super rare back then. It's still rare today, which is a little scary, but so much is moving to digital now. The digital is kind of eating everything else up. But for a long time, there just weren't a lot of people who were comfortable kind of operating in both worlds.
Wow. So again, this was 12 years ago. And you guys grow this, right? Were you trying to acquire new customers? Were you trying to maintain the ones you had? Were you targeting a certain type of audience or customer base that would give you the ability to grow and continue to scale?
Yeah. So at Camelot, I would say we were more focused on the right type of growth than just absolute growth. Like, we were very selective about what type of clients we would take. Were they a good fit for us, both culturally? Did we think they had a good business? And would they be somebody we wanted to work with? Because most of our clients we kept for a really long time, which is really rare in the agency business. Most of our clients are kind of a decade plus clients, which is almost unheard of. And so you put a lot of energy into winning a new client.
Yeah.
And it kind of puts stress on the team. Knowing
that you're competing against 4 or 5 other companies that,
And in our world, it means you're often competing against the holdcos, which is kind of the term we use for these big publicly traded agency holding groups that have, tens of thousands of employees, dozens of agencies within their portfolio. And they've got lots of resources to throw, especially at new business. So they will have massive new business teams that's all they do is respond to RFPs, meet with search consultants, work on kind of new pitch tactics or rehearsing pitches. Whereas for us, the team that was working in the business is the team that would pitch the business. So if we really wanted to go after a business, it was a big investment on our side because it meant the team had to work that much harder to spend time on your day job plus, kind of work in the new business piece.
Zero guarantee.
Yes.
Knowing again, the goal is to have them forever. And wow. So you go through this, right? And I don't know, you were kind of growing your baby, but someone else maybe gave birth to it, and you're doing this. At any phase, did you think that, hey, it's time to maybe, seek somebody to acquire us and give us a little bit more, fuel to fire?
Yeah. So, the first step for us was Sam, Alex, and I actually bought the agency from the founders.
Got it.
The Callahars were always great to us, and there was not an official succession plan in place, but I think there was kind of a wink between all of us. It would make sense at some point for us to, take over the agency. So we did that. We started that process in 2019, and then COVID happened. So we kind of put the brakes on it and wanted to make sure the agency was good.
The process to purchase it.
Yes.
Wow.
So COVID, like I said, put a delay in those plans because we wanted to make sure the world was okay. Our business was going to be okay. Clients were going to be okay. Our team was going to be okay. So then when the dust finally settled, then we kind of, kicked it back up. We officially bought the agency from them. And then later that year, we had lots of people coming to us, talking about, you should kind of really go out and see what opportunities are out there, because we think Camelot is very different than most agencies. And if you found somebody who had complementary superpowers, you guys could probably create something really, really special much faster than trying to, kind of build it on your own. So that's when we officially kind of started, the process. And for us, the goal really was finding that right dance partner, versus a particular number or something that's going to be an easy exit, because none of us wanted to stop working. Like, we love the industry. We love our team. We really wanted to find somebody who would kind of amplify what we were doing, and we could do bigger and more interesting things together.
So PMG. So PMG made sense, where, maybe the different interpretation, instead of just selling your company and playing golf every day, you sold your company and got to work smarter, harder, and you have a little bit more, ammunition to potentially scale, right? And,
yes.
And so your role, which again, it's always a work in progress, and you were saying that you kind of don't know what your title or your actual true role is, but right now you're helping integrate to bring it back to AI, where maybe from a marketing front, you're the guy that's going to essentially make AI marketing, and they're going to make them friends. Is that kind of?
Yeah, I'd say my role since the acquisition has been kind of a couple of things. And one is trying to make sure we actually bring the superpowers together. So part of the thesis in bringing the two companies together is we do have very complementary superpowers. How do we kind of connect that across the teams? And so a lot of my work has been integration of Camelot into PMG, but also making sure the things we do good get exposed to the broader PMG team, and vice versa. The things PMG does great gets exposed to kind of the legacy Camelot team. And part of that is how we're using AI, adoption of AI, thinking about AI for workflows, and things that can really kind of help save the team time on some of the redundant, repetitive tasks, so they can do the thing that clients really pay us for, which is like talking to them about business problems, and like having the deep conversation to understanding what they're really trying to do, instead of spending all your time pulling reports together and trying to find insights, having the insights kind of provided to you where you can digest them and then make business decisions on it.
Say everything you're doing in one word. If you had to describe what you're doing in one word and you're helping people with it, what is the one word? I'm going to see if we're clicking and I'm understanding it.
Integration.
Okay. I was going to say integration or efficiency. So you're essentially helping people save money, and you're helping people skip steps, where you're going to be an extension where marketing is so much more than creating an ad. It's so much more than buying media, but you're helping forecast the future, and you're doing this with the minds of 1,000 people that are constantly, through AI integration, maybe helping skip steps and keep you guys ahead of the game.
Yeah. And the best way to describe what we do at PMG, I would say, is we organize data and then let you action off of it to drive business results. And that sounds super simple and not that sexy, but most companies have huge data issues, and there's data in all these sources. They don't know how to do anything with it. It's kind of a hot mess. That's part of what we're really good at, is we can take all this data, get it in a form you can actually kind of interpret it, make decisions off of it, and then actually use that to optimize performance on all these digital platforms, in your TV buying, kind of in everything you're doing from a marketing perspective to actually drive business results.
Wow. It's a lot. Does it scare you that you're, again, from your experience, you kind of were the Renaissance man for, again, the big 2 or 3 verticals. And now there's one that is like, we can't fight it. We can't fight what's going on. But does that scare you, knowing that everything could change? It's changing daily, right? But maybe the language you know now is going to be a different language come 6 months, a year, or, however long from now.
I don't think it scares me yet. And I think one of the benefits I've had is, one, through most of my career, I was always the young guy.
Yeah.
I was, like one of the youngest people at the table. Even in the Blockbuster days, at 27, I was managing a $100 million budget.
God.
I had a 2-hour meeting with Jeff Bezos at Amazon because we were going to power a white label version of the DVD by mail service for Amazon. We were in the Facebook offices for Zuck's 24th birthday on their
Zuck.
Yeah,
he knows Zuck.
There, when he's walking around barefoot and he had a red Solo cup of beer. This is probably like at 2 p.m. in the afternoon. So I was internet OG, but always one of the younger people. Now I'm not one of the younger people anymore, but I feel like my secret weapon has been, I have 2 teenagers.
Yeah.
So TikTok and all these things, I understand because I have people in the house who are using them and I see how they use them and kind of the power of those things. So
God, it's so crazy. That's so crazy. It's so crazy. I was, Adam Ross by chance?
Yeah.
So this guy, he fascinates me. And I was talking the other day, he's kind of a mentor and he's our age. And again, he has kids, but he was talking about an ear piercing studio that he's a part of. And I was like, whatever. And he goes, guess the revenue from 25 stores. And I was like, I don't know, $1 million bucks. He said $100 million. And I was like, what? And again, that's just one example of how disconnected I am to stuff that I don't think it matters. But having, TikTok and people that can source different ideas for marketing and for venture and for real estate, it's happening. And it doesn't scare me. But again, it's just I'm every day that goes by, I'm one step further away from what's relevant. But maybe you're living in that differently, and you get to have people, whether it's your family or your team, you're seeing it before really anybody.
It does. And it's interesting how the wave moves. So one, partner of the agency we've worked a bunch with is Jimmy Donaldson, who's also known as Mr. Beast. And Jimmy, we discovered when he was, I think, 8 million subscribers. And I started talking to his manager, Reed, about doing something for some of our brands. And it didn't work out for a long time. So we talked for probably over a year before we finally did something with him. But my son had heard of Mr. Beast. Any of the brands we talked to, nobody had heard of Mr. Beast yet. So for a long time, just trying to explain what Jimmy did, kind of who he was, what his videos entailed, was really hard because the price tag wasn't small. So
to work with Jimmy,
to do an integration with Jimmy. And we finally got one of our big marquee brands to agree to do a big integration with Jimmy.
Am I allowed to ask which brand?
It was Experian. Which you would not think Experian.
A credit company.
Yeah. And the win was Experian has this awesome app. And one of the features in their app they call Boost, where you can boost your actual FICO score by getting credit for the things you just regularly do, like pay your Netflix bill, pay your Hulu bill, pay your cell phone bill. That without the app, you don't get credit for those things in your credit report. So for young people early in their life who have a really thin credit file, it's a great tool to kind of instantly improve your FICO score. So Experian came to us and said, hey.
This is Camelot or PMG?
This is Camelot.
No freaking way.
Yeah. So Experian came to us and said, hey, we're really missing the young male audience kind of starting their career. How can we reach more of them? And I instantly knew what it was. I was like, look, I know the way. It's out of the box, but this could be really great. So we started talking with, Jimmy's team. And we did an integration in one of his videos to kind of promote Boost. If you've ever seen Jimmy's videos, he does an awesome job with integrations. He really wants to understand.
They're authentic.
Yes, the brand, what you're trying to do. You have very little control. He wants to explain it in the way that he knows his audience would understand it. But his integration was amazing.
For Boost?
For the Boost app for Experian. His videos typically launch on a Saturday. When we did that first integration, the video launched on a Saturday. I think we were at 50 million views by Monday.
For just his video?
For just that one video. And Experian had their biggest app install day in history for multiple days. It just took off like a rocket ship. And we got more kudos from the client than most anything we've done. And a lot of it was people who worked at Experience, teenage kids were coming to them and saying, oh my gosh, mom or dad, this is the coolest thing you guys have ever did, because they understood the power of Mr. Beast. They understood, kind of Jimmy. And now, Jimmy is massive. He's all over the place. But it was a very typical thing for us, which is we weren't trying to do something revolutionary. It was an interesting solution came to us. And then when a client came with a problem, we were able to connect the dots on how do we solve this problem with this new interesting solution that came to us through our network.
Ready for a big question? How old is your youngest?
She's 16.
What do you do when she's in college? How do you source the next? How do we do this without looking like creeps?
Yeah.
You know Chris Camillo?
Yes.
So Chris was randomly the very first person to come on this, and he has this thing called I don't know what he says, but it's essentially like he sources his investments by going and just like watching people, right? Well, he'll go to like a Target in Minneapolis, which if I do that, I'm going to jail. But what the hell was the term? But I'm saying like he's so intentional about it, and then he'll do his deep dives and do it in a very Camillo way. But how do you and I do this efficiently while running other businesses and living in Dallas?
So I've thought about that a bunch as my kids leave, because my son graduates high school tomorrow.
Oh, wow. He's going to Boston?
Yeah, Boston College.
Wow.
In the fall. So he'll be out of the house. We've got 2 more years left with my daughter. So as long as they're in college, there's still some connection for me. But part of it is, one, at PMG, we have a great mix of people across the board. So there's always kind of an inflow of kind of young folks coming right out of school. We have this amazing kind of leadership program we'll put people right out of school through. So you always get kind of that influx of new thinking. But for me personally, one of the things I've always done is I visit all of our brands. So like, no matter who our client roster has been, whether at Camelot or now at PMG, when I have the opportunity to walk into a store, to check it out, like I try to touch and feel the brand as much as I can to see like, what is it like in the store? And like Nordstrom has been a client for many years. So every time I go to North Park, I always park by Nordstrom and I walk through the store before going wherever else I'm going in North Park. Because I just want to see, what's the foot traffic look like? What's the merchandise mix look like? Like, how does the store feel? And in some ways, it's a very small sample set. When you're Nordstrom, you've got hundreds of stores to go into one store, but
still,
I feel that connection's still important.
Camillo, observational investing. That's what he was saying.
Yes.
Dude, this is amazing. I'm so glad that we decided to pivot to this. You mind if I ask you some kind of cliche business questions?
Sure.
First hard challenge you went through, like maybe not the .com stuff, but maybe at Camelot, when you're on the ownership side, what was the first time where you got that taste of, holy crap, like this falls on me?
Yeah. So it was a real one. Shortly after we purchased the agency from the founders, we lost our biggest client.
Oh, God.
And I won't say who it is, but it was a client incredibly well known. They were forecasted to be our biggest revenue client of that year. So instantly we were faced with a serious challenge of, okay, what do we do? How do we kind of restructure the team? Because we weren't going to lay anybody off. Like, we were committed. We were going to kind of keep the core team and just keep pushing. So we had to think through, how do we get much better at new business? And we basically have to go win some new business to kind of make up for this loss, to kind of keep everything whole. So the ownership thing hit us in the face, pretty early on. And you realize the difference between, when you're writing the checks versus somebody else is writing the checks, for sure.
Yeah, renting an apartment versus owning a home. Yeah, your first day, the roof falls in. You're like, yep, I got to replace the roof. Best advice you've ever received?
This is kind of a soft one, but my dad, when I first started my career and I started traveling, for work he gave me some great advice. And he said, look, it seems like you'll probably have some travel in your career. He said, my advice is, whenever you travel for work, take some time to enjoy whatever city you're in and experience the city. Go for a walk, go find a pizza place or something. He's like, but if the company's gonna be paying to send you somewhere, you can squeeze some time in, like, try to take it all in. So from an early age, I've always done that. Like, when I travel for work, I try to get out and see the city. And I've been lucky to kind of go all over. So like, there's no city I can go. There's no city I don't kind of have my spots now where I can go and know, like, okay, I'm going to hit here and hit there. Ironically,
I was in Fort Lauderdale last week, and I wanted to stay inside my hotel room, because you walk outside and then you get punched in the face by the humidity. So what's your favorite city you've traveled to?
Oh gosh. One that's really special for me is we've had TurboTax as a client for over a decade.
Wow.
And they are based in San Diego, very close to La Jolla.
Oh,
so traveling to TurboTax for work, we would always stay in La Jolla. And then to kind of try to mix my family with work, which I've always tried to do in a positive way.
You go Legoland?
Legoland, but I started taking the family to La Jolla twice every year.
Oh, cool.
So we'd go as a family. I could go visit the TurboTax team. And then, so now my kids have grown up going to La Jolla. La Jolla is kind of a special family place. And so that the dad going to San Diego for work isn't a negative thing. It's a positive thing. Say, no, like, oh, and we're going to get to go there too, sometime soon.
Have you done a lot of advertising campaigns and like helped come up with taglines and marketing campaigns?
Earlier in my career, more than recently.
Ready for a fun question?
Yeah.
What's the advertising campaign for Ben Cooper?
Wow, that is a good question.
Have you been asked that before?
I have not.
Yes. Like Kyle's big question was, what drink would you be? And he's like, I don't know, vodka, soda. It's like, that's boring. Like this is a big question. Like, what's the Ben Cooper? Like, is it a 3D billboard with a burger coming out? What's the thing?
So this is going to be maybe nouveau cliche. It's a connected TV ad.
Ooh.
So think of an ad on Netflix, on Roku, on Peacock, on Hulu, because that today is kind of the best marriage of the old school media and the new school media. It's kind of, you're getting the big TV screen format of traditional TV on content people really are engaged with, but you have all the power of digital from the targeting and how you can control it. And I leaned into CTV pretty early when I saw it, because I kind of saw this is CTV, where everything's going. So I would say that I'd be a CTV ad.
Part 2 of the question. Who is your celebrity endorser? Who is the Jimmy? Who is the Zuck? Who is the Bezos? All these people that you have on speed dial. Who is that for the Ben Cooper ad, please?
Ryan Reynolds.
Oh, yeah.
He's so good.
He's so good. Which version of part 3 of the question? Which version of Ryan Reynolds?
I won't say Deadpool, because that's probably a little too, far over. But I mean, Ryan Reynolds in his natural state, I think. Like, he just seems like a genuinely funny, pseudo sarcastic guy, but also like he understands the marketing piece.
I love that. That's a great answer. And to bring it back to Kyle Stein, Ryan Reynolds with Aviation Gen. Ryan Reynolds, my favorite Ryan Reynolds movie, unfortunately brings back my childhood up until college, was Just Friends, where if you've seen that movie.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Actually, Amy Smart, who's a friend of mine, who plays the love interest of Ryan Reynolds, and then Chris, the guy from American Pie.
Chris Pine? No.
What the heck was his name? Chris Oz from American Pie. The other.
Yes.
What the heck was his? Chris Klein.
Yeah.
Did you say? I thought you said Pine.
Yeah, you're right. Chris Klein. He's a TCU grad.
Yeah, he is. Yeah, he's a Sigma Chi randomly. Anyway, whatever. There's no point to that story at all. Okay, business advice to someone that maybe is in a certain headspace as you, where they're too smart for what they're doing. Maybe they have something there that they want to do in the future. What's the advice you want to give to the Ben 20 years ago?
Be willing to take risk. And I think it's like investing in everything else. People will tell you, there's no reward with no risk. And I think the times I've taken a jump in my career and done something that was either unconventional or a little riskier are the ones that have panned out. So I would say, don't be afraid to take the risk.
Dream marketing client that you have not worked with yet.
It's interesting because I've worked with a lot of the brands I would have wanted to work with. We've kind of crossed paths with different ones, but to take it full circle, probably Netflix.
Yeah.
So we work with Netflix as an advertising partner, because we have clients who advertise on Netflix now that they have a ad-supported platform, but would love to actually do the marketing strategy, creative and media for Netflix as a brand. That'd be pretty awesome.
Well, maybe there's an end there. Second to last question, legacy, which I have a feeling actually I'm going to ask you 3 more questions. One, I think you're going to give a different answer than every single person that's ever done this before. And maybe not, but is there balance between entrepreneurship and life? Do you feel like you can create it?
100%.
Okay. See, no one else has said that, but even like with your answer with traveling and kind of living it in, I feel like you found a way to create balance, which I actually believe that. So how so?
I think it's just about priorities and understanding the trade-offs. There's probably things I've given up to keep some of the family balance.
Yeah.
And it's looking at it from a positive perspective instead of a negative perspective.
You're good for entrepreneurship. I feel like you bring such a different twist where literally every single person I've had on here that's been an entrepreneur has said absolutely not. But I feel like you, authentically have found a way to maintain balance. Second to last question, legacy. You look back in 50, 60 years, you're on your front porch, you're sipping your sweet tea. What's the legacy you leave in the world of business?
I don't think about business legacy as much as business friendships. And I look back on my career and like the amazing people I've worked with and still stay close to, and kind of those experiences and those relationships. And for me, like that's going to be the important thing more than any campaign we launched or award won or even, financial win. It's kind of the relationships that you have and the people you can kind of call up and go hang out with and tell the stories about, the fun times and the crazy things that happen.
But that is your legacy. It's the butterfly effect. It's the fact that you're no longer the new guy, the younger guy. You're not the old guy, but you're leading by example, and you want people to feel welcome. And you lose a big client, you make sure your people know that their job is secure. AI comes here. You buy an enterprise package for 1,000 people where they feel like they're welcome and they're a friend. And that is your legacy, is you're just everyone's friend, which really is what marketing is supposed to do anyway. It's supposed to make you feel comfortable and connected. And I think that's why you epitomize, that world probably as well as anybody. Last question. How do we best support you professionally? How do we go and send business your way? What kind of opportunities do you want to pursue other than people being nice and, connecting with them on a character perspective?
Sure. Well, obviously people who, work for large brands who are looking for a really good partner for marketing strategy, media, creative, digital transformation. I honestly think PMG, we are the best. So there's no better partner to work with. And similarly, if somebody's not the right size, I'm always willing to give whatever guidance and help I can and kind of point people in the right direction.
How do we contact you?
ben.cooper@pmg.com.
There you go. Love it. You're a unicorn. I mean, literally, your skill set is so vast, and I can see how you and Alex work really well together because it's very maybe yin and yang, or right brain, left brain, but
a little stepbrothers.
Yeah.
Kind of relationship.
Yeah. Don't touch my drum set. This was awesome. I'm really grateful for your friendship, and I'm glad I got to learn your story. So thanks for doing this morning.
Ditto. No, thanks for having me. This has been great.
Dude, that was kick ass.